We're seeing infertility on the rise. We're seeing colon cancer is now the #1 killer in terms of cancer for people under 40. Your colon is part of your digestive system. If you don't pay attention, those sneaky ingredients are building up over time. God designed our bodies very intelligently, and they can heal. If you give them space and time, they can heal from just about anything. They're finding that our gut microbiome regenerates itself with new cells every 3 days. So you give your body the tools, it will heal. We just want to help our systems thrive as young as possible. It's never too late to start. It's never too late.
Welcome back to another episode of the Raising Humans Project, and we're joined today in beautiful San Diego by our guest, Marissa McCrory.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We are so excited to talk to you today.
Same.
And when we were discussing potential topics around what we could tap into your genius for our audience about, we landed on a really cool one, I thought, which was creating a legacy of health within your home and your family. So
yes.
I just want to introduce you super quickly in regards to what you do and fill it in at the end if you want to. So you're a holistic health practitioner, the founder of the Lumina Path, where you've helped over hundreds of clients now restore their health through practical and root cause approach.
Yes.
With a special focus, of course, on gut health, nervous system support, mineral balance, and detoxification.
Yes.
Wow.
You really nailed it.
We did our research.
That's very good.
And I love following you on your social media
Thank
and stuff.
you.
You are so full of wisdom in this area.
Thank you so much.
So I wanted to jump into it and discuss that idea around a legacy of health in the home and what that actually means to you. Your high-level definition, because we're going to go deep.
Obviously, from a holistic perspective, there's a lot with nutrition and hydration and sleep, the lifestyle habits. In our household, as a family of faith and having gone through very stressful seasons, being married to a very ambitious entrepreneur and career type man, we had a season where God really taught us how to create more margin, how to live from value, and to not get caught up in the pace of the world, but to have the boundaries that work for us in different seasons. So I will say making sure we're regulated and that stress is something that we minimize as much as possible, living in modern day America.
Because that word legacy, I think especially, is pretty important when we're talking about family, which is obviously what this podcast is for. It's around empowering families, and building a legacy, especially if you are a family of faith, is something that's super important to us. So how do you define legacy in terms of what you teach your clients, but ultimately it starts at home, right? What you're teaching your family that you can then pass on.
Yeah. Wow. Such a good question. So legacy it comes around so many different topics, right? From a practical perspective. But ultimately, I want to know that I'm leaving an inheritance to my children's children, right? It's so easy to think about yourself, and that's where I had to start in modeling habits that were not always good. Let me say that very honestly. And learning from that, implementing them for myself, and then modeling what I hope they will eventually live in. You know, inheritance isn't just wealth of money, but I do think that if you learn habits from a young age, it's much easier to live them out as an adult. And with what I know, because of what I do, we're seeing infertility on the rise, we're seeing cancer on the rise, and I never want to come from a place of fear, but we do need to be empowered around what's really happening around us to be more resilient as humans in our health. So I hope I answered that, but it's a mixture of all of those topics in our house.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got young adults now. They're not little kids anymore, but certainly with my daughters and my sons, thinking around things like infertility or early onset cancer, because it seems to be, we're hearing, and I don't know, maybe it's just, we were talking about the overload of information with social media and stuff just before, but perhaps we're just hearing about it more, but it seems there's younger and younger people with cancers that would normally you'd find in older people coming to light. And I know personally, I kind of wish I'd had this conversation when my kids were littler, because you think you've got the time.
Right.
And then you blink and they're like teenagers
So
and then
fast.
young adults, and you're like, what the heck?
I know.
And I want to be able to say to my kids, we weren't perfect.
Right.
And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that a bit later as well. In our discussions, we've talked about that need to be perfect and then almost doing nothing because you just stagnate.
The all or nothing, right?
But what could I have done a bit differently to set them up for success with their hormones and with their health later on down the track? So
yeah, it's a good topic.
What was the turning point for you? You talk about, obviously, with your husband, and you had a very busy life with his entrepreneur and his businesses, and then raising a family. What was your turning point to go, something has to change?
Yeah, there were two, and the second one was the first one pushed me over the edge, and that's why number two happened. In 2019, we just got to a point with a business that we had built for the last 3 years before that, through some bad decisions and a bad partnership, we had this moment where we're like, we cannot keep doing this. We both at one point drove Uber at night to just pay our bills and pay our employees, but it was not going well. And you have to have those come to Jesus moments, literally, where you're honest about what's happening around you and say, Lord, are we doubling down or are we like done? And we felt like we were supposed to end it, but we were never going to do it dishonorably. You know, as a business, we could have bankrupted the business and just said sorry to the clients who had paid money for contracts. And we just felt like that would not be good for us and true to who we were. So in faith, we said, we'll pay it personally, not knowing any idea what the number was, but it was quite large. Mm-hmm. And over the next month, when we made that decision to honor, God started opening up huge doors for my husband and his income. I mean, it came in and went right back out to pay people back, but it was that like humbling and that faith moment that was truly just like made our trust in the Lord and our faith that much stronger. But the physical toll from the stress emotionally, and then just like not taking good care of myself after having 2 kids, like when 2020 happened and COVID, it was actually an opportunity for us to totally reset our life and how our family functioned. So there's been a learning experience of like adrenal fatigue actually is what happened to me in 2020. My body completely shut down. And now I know from what I know is like it was just a big toll on our bodies when we do go through something stressful. Even if it turns out okay, you still have emotions. And then learning the things I needed to know to push me into the trajectory of the physical health to know how to support our bodies. So there was 2 big instances and they piggybacked on each other.
We all seem to be in this world of such high pressure that we get so used to being in a stress state all the time.
Yeah.
It's really interesting when you sort of cite adrenal fatigue as this thing, but I think a lot of us probably are all in that space, but we don't even know it.
Totally.
Would that be correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can kind of, energy is weird. I believe like the Bible talks about energy a lot. It's not woo woo. It's just a thing. And you can kind of feel it in a room with somebody who is not regulated and is constantly like on all the time and has a hard time disconnecting from work. And I think it kind of comes back to like identity and worth too. But then some of it's just like modeled in and around us all the time. So I think COVID was like an opportunity for us. We were all separated, right? And it was at that moment where I'm like, so this is actually a gift. And I want to extract the lesson of whatever you're trying to teach me, Lord, because the fruit, yes, we have more trust because we went through this hard thing. But what other fruit do you want to teach me about in this season as we get to separate, slow down, and actually be together as a family? And I would say that was like a 3-year process of doing some work. I went to therapy and did some of the inner work on stuff and a lot of prayer. And we kind of came to this conclusion, like we've been sucked out of the matrix and it's a gift. And so we're going to, there are seasons to everything as your kids get older and sports and things they choose. But I haven't talked about it in the resource that we'll talk about later. But part of how we model a healthy lifestyle in our family is being choosy about what we say yes to, so that we can give our best yes and not be running around with craziness around us all the time.
Yeah, okay.
I love that. Talk to me about giving your best yes and how we can model that for our kids, but teach it to them as well practically.
Yeah. Well, it's actually the title of a book, which is very good. Highly recommend. But it's in the word, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And I've learned, like, I actually am built kind of slower. I'm more of like what I would say a type B than a type A. But then as I unravel that, I'm like, are there really type A's and type B's, or are there regulated and dysregulated people? And then are there different personalities in there? But anyways, knowing that I want to be really intentional with relationships and whatever God has put on my plate to do, I want to be engaged. I want to be present. Also, the whole like kids growing up quickly, I'm like, that's a gift. And I want to soak up as much of it as possible. And if they're my first ministry, then they should get my first and best energy. So what do I need to cut out that might be sucking energy so that I can show up really well for them? And like, I don't know if you ever do this, but it's kind of like standing outside of myself for a moment and like taking in little moments just to like hold on to the core memory. It might be completely mundane, but I think also having lost my dad at a young age made me realize that you don't have forever. And so living with that intentionality, I realized wasn't going to happen unless I took control of the calendar, or my husband and I, obviously, as a collective. But because it's so easy to say yes to like fun things, good things. But as a slightly introverted person, I know I recharge away from people. And so I have to be thoughtful of that, while also helping my kids be themselves. I have a very extroverted daughter and then a son who's slightly more introverted, I'd say. And so just helping them choose like one activity at a time. Like, okay, you guys want to play a sport? Great. Let's pick one and do it for a season and make sure we can give our best yes there and show up. If you want to do one other activity, let's talk about what it is and how important it is to you and thoughtfully add it in. But we've never been the ones who's like, let's sign up for everything and be gone every night of the week, because we also believe being around the table and having intentional time together where there's no work, there's no like homework or whatever. We can just be.
Yeah. So how about relationships with your kids in terms of cortisol? I'm thinking of my daughter when she went through high school as a teenager. She was great. She's extroverted, very people person, but one of her friends didn't gel well with the group that they'd gone into at this new school. And my daughter would come home so stressed because she wanted to be loyal to this friend, but obviously also be friends with this rest of this friend group. And she was so heightened for a good year and a half until she actually made the decision to come out of school at 15 and do distance education at home, purely because of this whole scenario. Now, that was a luxury that we had as a family for her to be able to do that. But what are the effects of cortisol on kids, whether they're teenagers or even younger? Because certainly, we've seen kids, very young kids, with very, very busy lives.
Yeah.
When does that flip over into stress? How do we recognize that as a parent?
I think you need to have space to actually like check in with that kid, right? And it kind of depends on their age. Cortisol, I wouldn't see becoming an issue unless you're in a very like abusive or very stressed out home environment. That can show up at any age, but the effects of it probably you could give more verbiage to as you become more of a young adult, and you can feel it because it's a hormone, and it's not inherently bad. It's just meant to have proper levels throughout the day. And what we're seeing and what I'm seeing, and even in one of the tests I do, I can see how stressed somebody is by how depleted their minerals are. Minerals are the first thing to go when you're stressed, whether it's stress from emotional or you've done crazy hard workouts for a long time. Stress comes in different phases, but for kids, giving them verbiage around that I would think you would have to just have more conversations with them to talk about how they're doing. And if they have the actual insight for themselves to say, this situation, this environment is not working for me, and I feel like that was very healthy of your daughter to recognize that at a young age, but I find a lot of adults don't know how to advocate for themselves because they think they should be doing something, or they should be people pleasing, or they should engage in this, you know, whatever was happening between those girls, like it's easy to get sucked into. And if she's like an empathetic type person, it's easy to get sucked into situations like that and then wear them. And that's where skills around boundaries and talking about like activities to get feelings out, therapy, journaling are great tools so that we don't wear the weight of others, but we do walk in compassion and love and kindness. So those are good conversations.
Yeah. Well, talking about teenagers and your background and your specializations and what you do, why are the teen years so important when it comes to the systems in their body in terms of like hormones and their metabolism, and you talk about a connection between the gut and hormones and just their general health. Can we talk about that in terms of in those teen years, the foundation years, where these things are starting to sort of kick off?
Yeah. So I just want to give this caveat. God designed our bodies very intelligently, and they can heal. If you give them space and time, they can heal from just about anything. And so I will say that, like, if you're already past this, like, it's never too late to start. It's never too late. Literally our gut, they're finding that our gut microbiome regenerates itself with new cells every 3 days. So you give your body the tools, it will heal. We just are more inundated now. And so for, boys and girls are different in how their hormones fluctuate. But, especially for girls, periods are starting earlier than we've ever seen. And infertility is rising. And so when we're thinking about those years of, 5 to 15, that 10-year gap, that's a lot of change, obviously. And our human bodies have learned to even like thrive in very harsh conditions because we are more inundated with toxins in the air, toxins in our food, and yet we keep going on. It's just amazing what the human body can do. And yet we have seen, like, with more processed foods, that this is like, it takes time to show up as an adult, but we're seeing colon cancer is now the number one killer in terms of cancer for people under 40. And your colon is part of your digestive system. So just think about things like processed foods, things in our water. Those are giving a toxic load over time. And so if we want to help things like hormones, which are more like the leaves on the tree, we need to go downstream and fix the foundational systems of the body. So digestion and your liver are the big ones I focus on. And then making sure that things like minerals, which are the precursors for a lot of hormones, are thriving. So there's so much in there, but if we could do it perfectly, we would definitely see less rates of disease down the road. So we just want to help our systems thrive as young as possible.
Okay, so the food that we're eating now, you're basically saying it's killing us. But what I'm sort of thinking is, as parents, how do we build a lifestyle with our kids when they're under all this pressure, when they're around other people who have food at other people's houses, and just when they're out and about with their friends and things? How do we build a lifestyle of healthy choices and healthy habits without it becoming like overbearing?
Definitely.
Yeah.
They don't get an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want that. In our household, we're very 80-20. So 80% of the time we're eating at home. I'm now teaching them, and have since they could read, like, what's on the back of that label of that food, if it didn't come out of the ground, or, and we're getting at the grocery store. I'm never going to be the homesteader, like making my own food. So I am team urban living, and I want to go to the grocery store. Let's just make that very clear. And so, but if we're not mindful about teaching them how to get the information, like reading labels, knowing what's in our food, then they can't ever make a decision for themselves as an adult. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it's not about control, but I have gotten them to take note in how do they feel after we go to the birthday party and we have the gluten-y cake with tons of sugar and red dye and yellow dye and all of the colors and all of those things. Like, how did you feel afterwards? And they're starting to take notice how they actually feel differently than how they eat at home. And we still have fun foods. We love to do family Fridays where we eat pizza. Sometimes we make it from scratch, but most often it's a frozen one, okay? And it's gluten-free, but we're getting better at like finding brands that are making them with less ingredients, things you can pronounce, but it's still easy. Because as a working mom, I am not a big cook. Thankfully, my husband is, but some processed foods come into our house. We're just getting better about empowering ourselves around reading ingredients and then prioritizing real food as much as possible. Yeah. So that does take time and attention. On Sundays is meal prep. And so they engage in that. They help cook food. And then we go have fun, and we don't freak out sometimes about every ingredient, and it's fine. But I will say, I think if you don't pay attention, it's very easy to eat out a lot more than you realize you are. And those sneaky ingredients are building up over time.
Yeah. So that's one of those things where, as we become such a busy society, we're so used to just pulling the car into to McDonald's and picking up food. Shree and I in our house, we try, especially when they were younger, very much was crowding out is what you called it, wasn't it?
Yeah, the crowding out theory of adding in more of the healthy things and more water instead of soda. I mean, we're not, Australia's not a massive nation for like a lot of soda and sugary stuff. We're quite a, I would say.
Most nations aren't.
Yeah.
America.
But, there were certainly habits that we wanted to change. And so we implemented the crowding out theory rather than just saying to our kids, you can't have this.
Yeah.
And taking it away, which would freak them out if they've been used to having, I don't know, a glass of Coke with dinner every night. Yeah. Again, not our kids, just an example.
Right.
But crowding out is then adding in some of the better choices.
Yes.
And eventually crowding out some of the less.
What was that thing we were watching the other day? And the woman was being interviewed, and she said, I just want her to make some healthy choices in the morning, like a waffle.
Because I try and make her eat waffles or pancakes for breakfast, something healthy, but all she wants is ice cream.
Wow.
They're both like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's levels, right? Yeah. And the part of the problem is the healthier food options are not as available to people who have less income. So there is a very real food issue in terms of the cost of it. Healthy food is more expensive, unfortunately. So that's why I always try to keep it really simple, because I've lived in seasons where we haven't had a lot of extra money. So prioritizing things like organic frozen vegetables, if you can't get them fresh, usually they're flash frozen, and sometimes they hold their nutrient value more when they're frozen like that. So there's ways to make it work. It doesn't all have to be crazy expensive. And I always tell people to start somewhere and pick an area to change. And as you run out of things, start making a change in that direction and just start educating yourself. This conversation is 13 years of researching on my own, cutting out gluten because my newborn was spitting up everywhere, it's all of the information is out there. And it doesn't have to be complicated to make a big change.
Yeah. So I know you talk about maybe 3 or 4 big areas or buckets when you talk about changing one area at a time. What are the different areas? Like if someone was going to pick one to focus on, what are the options?
Yeah. The number one thing I tell people to change if they haven't already is water. You're absorbing whatever you're bathing or showering in and whatever you're drinking. And we need a lot of water every day. So switching out to either getting a full house filtration system like reverse osmosis, or if you're renting, they have a couple of great tools on Amazon. One goes over your bathtub and just hangs there and it filters through. And then there's one for the shower. So what you're bathing in and drinking every day matters a lot. So that would be like the first one I would change. And tap water is just nasty. Like what comes out of your tap, do not drink it. Treat it as if it was lethal. Okay.
I'm like, what if there's something dead in those pipes? That's what runs through my mind.
Totally.
With tap water.
It just takes me back to when we were kids and we would be running around in the yard
Drinking
and
the
we'd be
hose.
drinking straight out of the hose.
Yes, we did. We totally did in
Yeah.
the 80s and 90s. But I mean, it's worse now. I'm sure back then it wasn't quite as bad. But again, we're very resilient as beings. So, but if we're having the conversation, I'm changing the water, number one.
Yeah.
And then anything else that goes in, on, or around us. The second one would be food, because that's literally going in. And now we're seeing the very real effects of added chemicals, the glyphosate, which gets sprayed on produce, and then processed foods just have so many things added to them. Our bodies can't keep up. So food is another thing. Next thing I would change. Third would be getting rid of any endocrine disruptors. So that's going to be fragrance and different chemicals. So cleaning products and personal care it would be the third one I would change.
Can you explain endocrine disruptor?
Yeah.
For people who don't know.
Sort of. Yes. It's a little complicated, and you need to just remember, like, we don't all have to be scientists to get the gist, but anything that is like artificial fragrance. So think on the big scale would be like plug-in fresheners or perfumes. Those are all artificial, and they mimic part of what your hormones would do, and it messes them up. Okay, it's not good to be constantly breathing that in. And then around cleaning products as well, a lot of them are fragranced. So I haven't worn perfume in like 10 years, and I literally gag if I get in an Uber that has an air freshener. Now my body is so trained against artificial fragrance that I'm just like, oh. So definitely not a thing you want on your pre-teenage kids smelling in all the time around the house or in their products.
So interesting, because the generation, when they get into those sort of late teen years, they're just buying perfume all the time, and they're buying all of these things and spraying them everywhere.
I think perfume would be the one thing I would struggle to give up, to be honest. And not that I'm a massive perfume wearer, but I do enjoy it.
It does make you feel pretty.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I created a guide, and we're going to talk about that. But I do love the aesthetic, and there are natural perfumes. So people are creating cleaner products, thank God, because it is fun. And I still want a good aesthetic. I still want a cute bottle. There's something very feminine about that. But luckily they're making better options. They don't stay on as long. So you're going to have to spray more on if you want to keep smelling like it. And they are a little bit more expensive, but I kind of like that. It feels like more artisanal and true. And now I literally can never go back. So luckily they're making really good options now.
And I know the ones with oils, the more natural ones that are put in with oil, they last longer, right? Rather than the spray on ones, because they're so full of alcohol, which then evaporates.
Yeah, I think it just depends. I've found the opposite to be more true, because they don't have as many things added to have that staying power. Mm-hmm. And I think that just because they're more natural, maybe you also get more used to the smell and you're not noticing it as much. So I think it probably just depends on the person too.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned before was something that I had been reading about recently with regards to the use of glyphosate. You say it's slightly different here in the States, but like Roundup and those like heavy chemicals. And I learned that they actually spray it on wheat to make it so they can harvest it quicker, because it dries it out.
Right.
But it's in all of the flour and everything. That's the reason why people can go to Italy and to Europe, where it's illegal to do that and tolerate wheat, but they can't do it here.
Yeah.
So the reason why I was looking into it is mainly around gut health. And you mentioned before the connection between the gut and the liver and that, but we're seeing some of these issues with one of our kids at the moment, where there is a gut issue going on, and it's very difficult to pin down as to what it is. But lifestyle seems to be such a massive part of that, and it's how do we how do we communicate this with our kids around this, because they they know everything, because they're kids,
Yeah.
they're teenagers. What does that conversation look like in terms of that, and also I'd like to sort of explore that gut liver thing as well.
Yeah.
Pete went yellow a couple of years ago. That
Yeah,
was weird.
I ended up
You
with
what you did?
I did.
Pete went
yeah.
yellow a couple of years
Ended
ago.
up in
That's why I was
hospital for
asking.
3 days while they did tests.
You went
and all.
yellow.
Yeah.
Like
I
you
just
turned yellow.
Yeah, I turned yellow.
He looked like a
But it was
Simpson.
a liver infection
Wow.
that was connected to something else, and they weren't sure what it was. But
Yeah.
but the thing is that I've started to realize this direct connection, and we've been doing a little bit of reading on it. But yeah, just can you tell us more?
Because you talk often about root cause rather than symptom management.
Totally.
With the work that you do.
Yes.
So, for example, when that happened to Peter, they just waited till he wasn't yellow anymore. And the levels started to drop and then sent him home.
You're okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
We didn't know as much then as we possibly know now about systemic cause and whatnot. But
yeah,
I know you work a lot around that. So explain that to us and perhaps with kids as well.
Yeah. So, it obviously depends on the age of the kid. But again, it's empowering them with information. And you can't always make them listen. But I guess if it's the child that's having a health issue, I would be like, hey, do you want to listen, or do you like being uncomfortable all the time? Because I would love, I don't know everything, but this is what I'm learning. And I know it's not as fun to be like the kid who's not eating the sandwiches and the things, but like you have to make a choice, and it's kind of an adult one.
Well, he's 24 now.
Oh, okay.
So, but but the interesting thing is we actually can pin it. Well, we think the issue started when he came down really ill with glandular fever, and then after that, the symptoms and things started to become a thing for him. But gut health is one of these things that seems to be a journey that's like a lot of adults have this problem, but it must start with healthy choices at the beginning, well, unhealthy choices piled up over time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, the liver is part of that too. It does over 500 things in your body. And it's something like we're not taught about these things, even in like a health class, right? Like they're not talking about this. Even your doctor doesn't know some of this because they're doing their best. They're learning what the information that they're given that somebody else decided they needed to know. And wellness isn't what's taught. So you really have to advocate for yourself and learn. So the liver is part of that. It's more inundated. It's basically your filter. Like a house has a filter, multiple filters. It's your filter. So drinking alcohol, antibiotic use, ibuprofen or acetaminophen, all of these things are inundating our filter, and it's now can't keep up with the other parts it does, because it also plays a part in your hormone synthesization. And then your gut is in there too. And things like leaky gut are being caused by the glyphosate is weakening the lining of the stomach in general. And then downstream, you're seeing thyroid issues because, anyways, there's a lot to it. But I decided to focus on as a simple path for people to not chase every symptom that's on the tree. A lot of it is the root, and just biblically, even like that just made sense to me. So I like simple things. I like a shortcut. Our body, given the tools, will heal. And so that's why I've decided to focus on the very practical, very addressable things in pretty much every adult human, just in helping the liver and the gut have a chance to actually heal so that the other things, the leaves on the tree, are healthier.
Yeah. So you set that up young so it's not such a big change later.
Absolutely.
So that's the one thing as parents we can bring into the house, and the choices we make in terms of the food that we're eating.
Definitely.
And the things we're actually putting into our gut.
I would say start with reading labels. If you literally are doing nothing else and you cannot make every meal from scratch, I get it. Start reading labels. And if there are words you cannot pronounce, don't buy that thing.
Yeah.
You should be able to read every ingredient. And luckily more brands are emerging, with like chips. Maybe you can't do grains as much. So Siete brand is one that has become emerging that has really clean ingredients and like a list of 3 or 4 ingredients on a label. That's the type of food we should be prioritizing.
It's kind of related. So, okay, parents of daughters, hormones and everything that's going on in them. I mean, boys they've got hormonal changes as well that are going on. So all of these choices that we're making in terms of food, you mentioned that fertility and things have been on the dive.
Yeah.
In terms of children, would you say that was 100% related to lifestyle choices that we're making now in terms of what's going on?
Not 100%. No, it's the overall toxin load. So air, water, food, anything that's going in and on or around us is being absorbed, and then your body has to process. So it is that total toxin burden that is taking a toll. I don't like to be like a conspiracy theorist. If some people believe it's true, it's not. Like they're spraying the skies to genetically engineer the weather. So we're having to deal with that. Our air is not as clean. Our water is not as clean. It's not something we have to be afraid of. It's just that we need to be aware of the fact that like people, I don't know if there's like a mastermind behind it. I don't believe that, but there's not a lot of thoughtfulness around wellness and helping people thrive. So we have to take that information and do the best we can in making changes.
Yeah. So in terms of our skin being our biggest organ, and especially our girls, like they're putting all sorts of stuff on their skin all the time.
Yeah.
Skincare, makeup. I can't even pronounce the stuff that they put on their skin. There seems to be so many things, and
there's a lot.
And they claim it's good for them in this pursuit of youth. But I kind of feel like, isn't that contributing to this toxic load that they're putting on their body without them actually knowing that that's what they're doing?
Yes, if they're not using products that are cleaner.
Yeah.
So
do you think clean beauty products are a thing, or do you think it's marketing hype?
I think they're definitely a thing. Like even in the UK, their product standards, they only accept like a third of the amount of chemicals that America can put in their products. So I'll also say this is a huge issue in America. And I'm glad I'm here to help people and their health. But yeah, we don't see those same issues as much in other countries. So maybe you're blessed to live in Australia. I don't know. Yeah. I think they use UK standards for
really close. We
products?
have a really our therapeutic goods. It's called the Therapeutic Goods Association. They regulate what can be put in public and what can't be. Because I've seen interviews and videos of people comparing the ingredients of the same product sold here in the US to the same product that's sold in Australia, and the ingredient list in Australia is half of what's in there. And this is for like on a packet of cookies or something like that.
Right.
I think you were looking at McDonald's fries or something even the other day.
Yes.
You know, Australia versus America, and it was like 4 times as long, the list.
Well, exactly. And whether you like him or not.
Same.
Yeah. President Trump, and he has Robert Kennedy Jr. as like the head of the health department. And I love what they're doing. They are bringing this to light. Like moms have been advocating for these things for a long time. And we're seeing some of these companies make changes because they're being pushed. Because you're right. These huge manufacturers of food that are global do make products with less chemicals in the countries that they're made to. But here in America, we still get something else. Why wouldn't you just make the same one globally?
They taste the same. Or like with the makeup, they feel the same.
Exactly.
Or they do the same. There is stuff that I can only buy here, same product that I can't buy in Australia. Now I'm thinking there's probably a good reason for that. I shouldn't buy them here, but anyhow.
I get it. You know, there is vanity. And I have had Botox twice. I'm not going to lie. Ultimately, I didn't like how it felt. I'm very aware of my body. So this is where I have the conversation with even clients. I'm like, this is where you need to make the decisions for yourself, and you get to decide your ratios. In some seasons, I'm like 90-10, and I'm like, I'm not doing this, I'm cutting this out. And most of the time it's 80-20 for me, because I do like a good cocktail and I do like to travel and do things like that. And then, some products just aren't the same when they're cleaner. And so I will say that industry is getting better, even on like the branding side. So I do think you should lessen the toxic burden, especially fragrance would be the big one I would cut out of the product line. And then just trying to make better choices all around in terms of the big buckets for sure.
Sure. And that brings us to this amazing take home that you're providing for our viewers,
yes,
which you sent through to me today. And I said to Peter, this is so beautifully designed and full of such wisdom. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Tell us a little bit about it, because when we first started talking, I said to you, Marissa, as someone who already has studied, with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, has some awareness, it still feels so overwhelming at times. It's almost like ignorance is bliss, push it to the side and just hope for the best. I know I don't want that for my kids. And that to me is what legacy is. It's like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough as a mother. Maybe that's good enough for me. It's not.
Yeah.
But not when it comes to my kids. So tell us about what you have put together for our viewers.
Yes. And I love that we're talking about that, because that is a really good legacy. And I know, like, I haven't put in the guide, I was born in the 80s, raised in the 90s by a single mom, grew up basically on processed food. Mom, I know you did your best. It's okay. Don't feel bad about it. But I had to learn all of this on my own. And I get the very real, like, we are inundated with marketing all the time. And that's why it feels hard. And not everybody is doing it. So I will say one of the big reasons we moved back to San Diego was like health is all around us, and more people are making healthier choices. It makes it a lot more supportive when you are a family trying to make good decisions for your kids around health. And you literally could throw a rock and hit a juice place, So it's much easier to live healthy here than it was on the East Coast and the South. The takeaway is full of practical just advice of where to get started. If you're starting from 0, if you're starting from 5 and you want to get to 10, like, here are the big buckets that you can shift in your home to make a big difference in your gut health and overall hormone health of your home.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Marissa, it's been so lovely having you with us
you.
today on the Raising Humans project. We're going to put all of Marissa's details in the show notes. If you want to follow her on her Instagram or her socials, sign up for her newsletter and work with her, then you can find all of that down below. But thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It was an amazing conversation.
Thanks for joining us today on the Raising Humans project. We'd love it if you'd leave a comment below. Tell us what you want to hear about and who you want to hear from.
Yeah. Who are the top parenting voices in the world today? Let us know.
Yeah, because we're running out of people to talk to.
We're not running out of people to talk to. Look, if you can please like, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to be notified of future episodes, and we will see you next week. Well, I'll see you at home because we parent together.
Please tell your mates, because we want people to hear this.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.